Is France at war with its Muslims? President Emmanuel Macron has launched a nationwide crackdown on so-called radical Islam following the beheading of a teacher, and he promises even tougher action. But will this iron fist policy work, and how much is politics at play? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hashem Ahelbarra. He says he's protecting the French people from evil. President Emmanuel Macron has promised to step up crackdowns on what he calls radical Muslims. A mosque has been ordered closed and a pro-Hamas group dissolved. It follows dozens of raids on Muslims and organizations suspected of inciting hatred. The campaign comes after the stabbing and decapitation of a teacher by a Moscow-born Chechen refugee who was later shot dead by police. Samuel Paty had discussed cartoons of Prophet Mohammed in a class on free speech. Andrew Simmons reports.
A march in silence to mourn the death of a French schoolteacher stabbed and decapitated in broad daylight in a suburb of Paris. Yet political reaction to the murder of history teacher Samuel Paty is anything but quiet. To the sound of the national anthem, members of the French Parliament gathered. Then a minute's silence. Afterwards came this proclamation.
We are united, standing and determined to fight the instigator of this murder, because in Mr. Samuel Paty lies the France that is republican and humanist, that was cravenly and atrociously attacked.
Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has ordered a crackdown on Muslim organisations.
As of tomorrow at the cabinet meeting, we will dissolve the Sheikh Yasser collective directly implicated in the attack. More decisions against associations and groups of individuals will follow in the coming days and weeks. Our determination is complete. The acts will happen. The Republic needs them.
Here, worshippers at a mosque that's been closed down by the Interior Minister, who claims its leaders shared an online video saying Samuel Paty should be intimidated. He says they also shared the address of his school.
From the moment someone relays a video, you should chase him, not the mosque, not a whole community.
Protests against what the government has described as Muslim extremism followed Paty's death. He had been killed by an 18-year-old of Chechen origin who was shot dead by police. Earlier this month, Muslim parents objected after the teacher had shown cartoons of the Prophet Mohammed in a lesson about freedom of expression. The images were first shown by the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, and that led to a wave of attacks in 2015. What's happening in Paris right now is causing more divisiveness, along with fears that what political leaders call a zero tolerance to Islamic extremism will escalate into more violence in both communities. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera.
Let's bring in our guests who are all in France. In Paris, Yasser Louati, head of the Justice and Liberties for All Committee and human rights activist. In Saint-Malo, Jacques, senior research fellow at the Global Policy Institute. Also in Paris, Renaud Girard, chief foreign correspondent for Le Figaro. Welcome all to the program. Yasser, we seem to be dealing with too many things here, and we seem to be at the same time to be in the midst of a chain reaction. What is the government trying to achieve by this crackdown on people they accuse of promoting hatred?
Well, in my humble opinion, to steer away attention from the failures of the state, we have to remember that in France we have mass surveillance. Multiple laws were passed supposedly to counter terrorism. All of our communications are under scrutiny by the state, all of our internet activity. Yet, despite that, and to make things worse, that the culprit was reported, including by Muslims. He still got away with multiple publications, and the state did not intervene to apprehend him. That's, again, to quote John Brennan, former head of the CIA in 2015, it's again a massive intelligence failure, and it's also the trial of mass surveillance in France. The second trial is also the trial of social media that have allowed the publications to continue, and for them not to be able to work with the state on these issues. Now, for Emmanuel Macron to hold Muslims responsible for the actions of one individual that just sought asylum and was also 18 years old, it's again what François Hollande did, collective punishment, and saying we are united, but in the us he's talking about, Muslims are not included.
Jacques, now the President and the Interior Minister both spoke about the need to implement a zero-tolerance policy, but people are saying that by targeting NGOs, some of those NGOs have been defending against Islamophobia. They are pretty much concerned about this being used to just silence Muslim voices in France. How do you respond to that?
The government is responding very strongly in a very martial way because there's a very strong emotion in France. It has shaken everybody, and it's at the same time, it's during the time of the Charlie Hebdo trial, and France sees itself as the flag bearer for the principle of secularism, where the law of the people, the law of the land is more important than the law of God. And it's an issue which has been put to the front of the political agenda by the right in France, which has been hoping to capitalize on that. It's one of the weak, Macron was perceived as not being strong enough on the fight against radical Islamism. At the beginning of the month, he made a big speech saying that radical Islamism was the enemy of the Republic and should be fought. And therefore, he has to act strongly for domestic political reasons. Otherwise, it will open open possibilities for the National Front and more right-wing politicians to capitalize on that, and which could threaten his next election. So there's a political agenda, but at the same time, there is a strong emotional response in France, and France still sees itself as really the inventor of secularism and must do everything to defend this principle.
Bruno, this is what is confusing people. France is talking about the need to defend the basic tenets of secularism. Emmanuel Macron is saying that we need to defend against what he described as Islamist totalitarianism. And then there is this case of incident, the gruesome murder of teacher Samuel Paty. Where does France stand here?
Yeah, no, but actually, like, people are like just bewildered in France because they realize that foreigners came to ask asylum to France to be able to have free education by the French system, free hospitals, social aid, help for the house and so on. And they seem not to have gratitude, or worse than that, they are attacking a pillar of French society and of French civilization, which is school. You know, we have a school which is secular, which is compulsory, which is free. You don't have to pay for school in France. And that's a very old French institution, old more than 140 years. You know, it's a very old French institution. And this terrorist that has been given asylum by France, instead of showing any gratitude, he went to kill one of these devoted and good professors that try to improve the level and to explain history and contemporary history to their pupils. So it's a real shock that France could have given asylum to people who do not share at all its values. And now the French people would tell this extremist, France, you love it or you live it.
Okay. Yasser, a few weeks ago, President Macron spoke about the need to tackle what he described as Islamist separatism. To what extent the upcoming elections are a factor in this move by Macron, in this repositioning of President Macron?
I would answer your question, but just to address what has just been said, we have to remember that teachers in France have been called as Islamo-leftists by the people who are today portraying them as heroes of secularism. Second, now to answer your question, to quote an artist, don't believe the hype. First, Islamic separatism, the term was used right after the Black Lives Matter marches against systemic racism and police brutality. No one has defined what separatism means, just like, to quote the French Senate, radicalization has been adopted, quote unquote, under the pressure of events. So right now, another term was coined, the branding of Islamophobia under Emmanuel Macron, to target active Muslims in French society. And to him, what he calls Islamic totalitarianism, well, first, totalitarianism is a European concept, and Muslims have no responsibility in what happened in the 20th century. So today, what Emmanuel Macron is doing, he knows that he's got nothing to show for his economic policies, Yellow Vest movement, nothing to show for his institutional policies, the many resignations due to corruption, conflict of interest, the fact that his own Minister of Interior, Gérald Darmanin, is under investigation for sexual harassment and rape, and the fact that the only thing he's got right now to run for re-election is the identity card, what I call Islamo diversion. You create a Muslim problem to prepare your re-election. We are 18 months before the election, and Emmanuel Macron is not addressing French by telling them, I'm going to fix the economy. For example, 32,000 people have died under the COVID-19 in France. 200,000 people are pressing charges. Emmanuel Macron right now has been cornered, and the only way for him to seek re-election is to divide this country further. And the last point, if I may, sir, we have to remember that Muslims, wherever they are victims of terrorism, abroad and at home as well. And what's happening today, unfortunately, Emmanuel Macron is playing with fire by appealing to the far right. And people say today, the far right is already in power with his ideas.
Jacques, is Macron in a way concerned that if he does not take a tougher stance now, Marine Le Pen would step in and say, you know what, this is a president who is failing his own people?
Yes, obviously. Already Marine Le Pen has been upping the stakes, asking for a ban on immigration, because saying that immigration is the seedbed of terrorism. But Macron, in his speech earlier this month, was very clear in saying that he did not attack Islam, just radical Islamism, which even some Muslim leaders in France say is not religious. Radical Islamism, as director of a mosque, of the Paris mosque, said Islamism is not a religion. It is a political ideology based on hatred and a wrong reading of the sacred text. It leads to jihad and atrocities against Muslims as well as against Europeans or people of other religions. So that's the issue. The issue there is not about Islamophobia. Macron was in his speech was very careful saying that yes, some people are tempted by a radical approach to Islamism because they feel left out by French society. The motto of French society, liberty, equality, fraternity. People have been, some people in the suburbs are victims of racism, discrimination, and he was careful in his speech to balance. It was very a good balancing act between denouncing Islamism and accepting that France had the responsibility for the fact that some French citizens of Muslim religion or different or black background feel left out and feel that the principles of France, liberty, equality, fraternity, is a sham.
All right.
And some of them are tempted by radical Islamism, and therefore is putting all his actions towards
radical Islamism,
trying to, that's impossible to eradicate, but trying to really fight it.
Okay, if you don't mind, Jacques, before we move forward, I feel like Yasser wants to say something very briefly. Yasser.
Milak, whatever has been said, can we clearly agree on what's the definition of radical Islam? What is it?
Radical Islam is the one which is includes the Salafist, the Muslim Brothers, and the jihadists. That's what France defines as
the Muslim
Brotherhood
who have been at war with the Salafis for a century are part of the same radical Islam.
I have to go to Renaud. Renaud, in 2018, 100 French intellectuals stepped up with the manifesto against what they described as Islamist totalitarianism. And they said there needs to be a robust action by the political establishment. Is France trying to codify some sort of a French Islam here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why in this debate you are talking about Islamophobia. It's not a Muslim that has been attacked in the street. It is not a foreign Muslim that has been beheaded in the streets. This is phobia. This is crime. This crime was not committed against a Muslim. It was committed by a Muslim. So I don't see why we are speaking of Islamophobia. The victims, because there is one dead, is Samuel Paty, okay? So he's French and he's the victim. This is about phobia and Islamophobia. Now, what you have in the speech of Macron, of course, the speech of Macron is not against a enlightened Islam. We have it for a long time in France. We have a mosque in Paris that doesn't have any problem with anybody. We had Muslim fighters in our armies. We have even officers wearing the kepi with the crescent and the star of Islam because they were conducting Muslim soldiers from North Africa. So there's no problem. And of course, and there's a museum that has been built recently in France to be able to study Islamic civilizations in the world, and it's a very good museum. It's called l'Institut du Monde Arabe, and it's fine. But there is something that has no place in France. It is Salafism. Okay, so in France, it's very clear. We have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience. If somebody is Muslim and he wants to quit and to become a Christian or a Jew, no problem, okay? And we have another principle, which is equality between women and men. And
but then,
we have a third principle, is that religion... Sorry, can
if you don't mind, Renaud, because I'm sorry, I have to step in here. You're talking about...
I want to a principle, which is that religion and politics should be separated, and religion is for your home, for your family, and in the public space, religion should not intervene.
Yeah, but
so
you're talking
about the French.
You're talking.
Okay.
You're talking about.
With this principle, they should leave French territory. Am I clear?
I'm just trying to understand your rationale, and I have some issues with the way you're trying to explain things. You're saying that the Republic has the obligation to ensure that the rights of the people are respected. And you remember the case of the lady who was with a headscarf, and the members of the parliament said, we want her to leave the ground. the area, when the Republic itself is saying that it's absolutely her right to have a headscarf. And we're trying to separate between two issues here: a murder, a gruesome murder of Samuel Paty, and about the debate which is now taking place in France. And let me go to Yasser. Yasser, there's this call now for reining in religious institutions, reforming Islam. Isn't this something which has been tried again and again for many years in France and never worked? Why?
Because we have the confusion we just heard for the last 3-4 minutes. It's a soup, it's a mess, and there is a mixture between what France is about, really, yes, laicity is sacred, freedom of speech is sacred, freedom of religion is sacred as well, but freedom of religion, if I may tell Mr. Renaud Girard, it's the right to have a religion and to be able to express it. If I tell you you have freedom of speech, but only at home, then you have no freedom of speech. The same applies to religion. So if Muslims want to be Muslims and show their adherence to their faith, they have absolutely the right. The same way for Catholics, Jews, and even for people who don't like religion to say, I do not like religion. That's what laicity is about. I have the right to believe and not to believe, and especially not to be prosecuted if I ever believe. Now, as for coming to develop a new concept of Islam according to Emmanuel Macron, this just violates what I just spoke about. Laicité, it's a French republic, it's a secular republic. The government, the state, has nothing to do with religious affairs. And thank God that religion does not interfere into state affairs, and the state should not intervene in religious affairs. But again, this is a neo-colonial management of Muslim affairs. Why? Because in 1905, Mr. Girard knows about that. In 1905, when the law laïcité was passed, it was indeed applied on continental France, but never in the colonies. Why? To keep Islam and Muslims under control. Now, there is a third way. Please, just a third way. If the state wants to see a French brand of Islam, how about letting Muslims manage their affairs, decide who can represent them and what they can gather around? If the state wants to help, give them the platforms to organize, and then they will come up with their solution. I have not seen a Muslim organization say we are against freedom of speech. Okay. I have seen Muslim organizations saying we want to have an equal footage in freedom of speech. When you demonize us, we have the right to speak back. And unfortunately, we don't see that at Le Figaro, for example.
Okay, against the backdrop of this tense environment, Jacques, who do you think should lead the debate in France about the need to answer all those issues and fix all the problems in France?
It should be everyone, and the Muslim people, and already some of the Muslim leaders are talking about it, making a debate, and as the issue of a more enlightened Islam. In fact, there's a strong belief most of the Muslims in France practice their religion very calmly, without any problem. There's no problem there. But unfortunately, there is a brand of Islam which has developed in the last few decades, which is actually threatening not only in the case of France, the balance between state and religion, but which is also having a massively negative influence in the Arab world. And we've seen the jihad, we've seen Daesh, we've seen all that. And we can't say that religion is meant to be about peace, I believe. And this sort of it's political, as as many religious leaders are saying. Let's not forget that, in France, secularism is not destined. It was not aimed when the law was passed in 1905 at the Muslim religion. It was aimed at the Catholic religion, because during the 18th century, the Catholic Church tried to impose its rule on French society. And the law of 1905 is the result of a long fight between the the hard-fought battle between the Republican forces, which promoted the state as the undisputed ruler of French society, and the Catholic Church, who wanted to re-establish some of the influence it had before. And in France, religion is tolerated, is accepted. The role of the state is protect religion.
Thank you, Roland.
When religion becomes a threat to public order.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but I promise you we'll definitely revisit this particular issue in the near future as the debate continues in France about how to move forward and what kind of Islam France is looking forward to see prevail in the near future. Yasser, Louati, Jacques, Roland and Renaud Girard, thank you very much indeed. Looking forward to talking to you in the near future. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com, for further discussion. Go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AGA Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AGA Inside Story. From me, Hashem, Ahelbarra, and the entire team here. Bye for now.